Hi everyone, this is a tutorial to make a beaded poppy for Remembrance Day. Before we get started, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge why we wear poppies. Remembrance Day is a time to honor the sacrifices made by those who served in the military, protecting our freedoms and values. Wearing a poppy serves as a symbol of remembrance and respect, reminding us of the courage and commitment of veterans who fought for our country. It's an opportunity to reflect on the impact of war and the importance of peace in our lives. Indigenous veterans have played a significant role in Canada's military history, often serving with remarkable bravery despite facing discrimination and exclusion. Their contributions are a testament to our resilience and dedication. We must ensure their stories are acknowledged and celebrated. By wearing a poppy, we show our respect not only for those who lost their lives, but also for all veterans who have returned home. Let us take a moment to remember their sacrifices and honor their legacy. So here is what your finished product will look like. This tutorial will be using the 2-needle method. You will need stiff felt, a poppy pattern. This is optional, but here I glued a cabochon onto my pattern, vinyl leather backing, size 11 beads, size 10 works as well, glue, thread, I'm using size D here, 2 needles, and a pin. The first step is to thread both a long beading needle and a short needle. I double my thread on the long needle. Double knot the ends of both strings. I use about an arm's length of thread. I wax my thread off camera, but later in the tutorial I show you how to do that. So now I'm going through the back of my felt with my long beading needle and putting it through as close to the cab as possible. Load some beads onto your needle. I usually use about 6 to 8 at a time and push it all the way to the base of your thread. So now using the thumb of my non-dominant hand, I'm going to push those beads into place where they will lie nicely and tuck my needle away into the felt. Using my short needle, I am going to go through the back and tack down in between each bead. So that's just placing a stitch over the thread of your bead line. You don't have to go through every single bead. I prefer to do every bead because I think it helps with the spacing of my beading. A lot of people do every 2 beads. I think that's most common. You could probably do every 3 beads too if you wanted to get things done a little bit faster. Okay, so now I've finished around the cab. I'm just putting that final tack line down, and I am going to grab my beading needle and I'm just going to push it through the felt, and that's going to secure down that entire line. So next I'm going to do is the black outline of the petals, and I just check on the back to see where my last stitch went through, and then I'm going to go through the back and go to the front, and then again load on my beads and then use my non-dominant thumb to hold them in place. Grabbing my tacking needle, I am going to go and tack down all of those, and you just do this all the way around that petal and then move on to the next one. So it'll be the same steps over and over. You put your beads on, tack them down, beads on, tack them down. So once you're done that first petal, you're gonna go and continue doing the other 3 petals. To have a cleaner look, you could tie this off in the back. I didn't, and I find when I'm teaching in person that tying knots is what people struggle with the most. So just for time's sake, I am just going right back through where I want this next line to start, and then repeating the process of adding my beads onto my bead line, tacking down with my short needle. Okay, so now that all 4 petals are done, I would recommend tying this off in the back and then double knotting your threads again. We're going to start these small details in the middle of the petal, so using your long needle, go through the back close to that first middle line of beads, add 3 beads and use your non-dominant hand and hold those in place, and immediately go back down with your long beading needle. You could leave this as is, or for a more tidy look, grab your tacking line and tack down in between each of those beads. Now that those 3 beads are tacked down, we are going to add a single bead on either side of the line. So go through the back with your long beading needle, add a single bead, hold it in place, and go right back down with the same needle. Do this on all 4 petals, and then we are going to tie the strings off. So this is how you tie off your strings. You want to do this before your thread gets too short, but flip it over and find a pre-existing stitch. You're going to slip your needle under that stitch and it's going to create a loop. Then pull your needle through that loop you created and pull tight. Do this a few times to make sure that it's really secure, and then cut off, leaving about 1 centimeter of thread. So again, here I am showing you how to tie the ends of your thread. This is something people really struggle with, so take your time. So I'm just wrapping it around my finger, pushing the tail through and pulling it tight, doing that twice to create a double knot. Then I'm going to wax my thread to ensure it doesn't get tangled and for tighter stitches. So I grab my cube of beeswax and I place my thumb with the thread along it and just pull. So now it is time to fill in the red. I am going to be using the same technique as the black beads, so pull your beading needle through the back to the front, load up your red beads about 6 to 8, move your beading thread out of the way and tuck your needle into the felt, and then start tacking those beads down with your short needle. I chose to bead following the contour of the petal, but you could totally use like a vertical or horizontal line and do that for a different look. Fill your entire petal up, then move on to the remaining 3. Remember to change your thread if they do get short before it's too short for you to easily tie it off, and if they're getting tangled or knotted, just wax your thread again with that beeswax. Now that your entire poppy is filled in, we are going to make sure that both of the strings are tied off in the back using the same technique as before, and then we're going to pull the paper off. If it is not pulling off easy, you can get it damp and then it should rip off easier, or use tweezers or pliers to get the last little bits out. If you do get it damp, make sure that you wait for the felt to dry before moving on to the next step. Then cut off all the excess felt using scissors. Just make sure that you're looking at the back to see where your stitches are to make sure you don't snip any. Once you're happy with the shape of your poppy, grab your vinyl leather backing and flip it over and a marker or Sharpie and trace that shape out. Then you're going to cut that out with scissors. So now you have both of your front and your back piece. Just line them up to see if they fit together perfectly. If not, give it a little trim. So unfortunately, while I was doing this, I forgot to hit record. So you can already see my glue there, but next step is going to be to take your pin and push it through the middle of your backing and then add your E6000 glue. So less is more. I added this actually onto the felt of my project, and I just kind of smeared it around. You can go all the way to the edges, but just be careful not to do too much because it's going to gum up your thread and needle as you're sewing on your edging. Push those together and make sure that it's all stuck and everything feels secure. The last step of this tutorial is to do the edging. So to do that, thread your beading needle, double it, and tie a double knot at the end. Peel the backing up and push your needle through the inside to the outside, tucking the knot in between the layers. Load your needle up with 3 to 5 beads, and you're basically just sewing the layers together with beads on each stitch. If you're following this tutorial with a mail-out kit, I recommend using only 3 beads as you have a limited amount of beads. If you're worried you don't have enough beads or spilled or dropped a lot, you could use the same technique as the rest of the poppy, just going through 2 layers instead of 1. Continue sewing both sides together with beads until you make it all the way around. This is going to look best if the stitches are even distance apart and depth into the lining, or not the lining, the backing. If you run out of thread before you're finished going around, so you can tie it off using the same technique as before. So find a pre-existing stitch, go through it, and then go through the loop, pull it tight, do it a couple times, and then you can go through the beads to hide your thread, and then snip the thread off as close to that last bead as possible, and it should hide it completely. Then just tie on new thread and go through the backing and tuck that knot in between the layers just like before. Now I'm just threading on the last string of beads, and then I'm going to tie it off again using the same technique. Make a loop, pull it through, pull it tight, do it a couple times, and then go through that last line of beads and then cut as close to the last bead as possible to hide that thread. Then yay, it's complete. Your poppy is done. Thanks for watching. I hope that this helped you learn how to bead and that you feel a sense of pride and accomplishment at what you've done. I would also like to thank Bonnie Lamouche for teaching me how to bead a couple years ago. This knowledge she shared with me has helped me grow and pass down cultural skills to many youth across Alberta. I think it's important for us to acknowledge the elders that teach us and to keep sharing their teachings. Marcy, hi. Thank you for watching.